don't know how you do it, buddy.
Hey, you find a way to get things done, and when it's sunny and above freezing, what do you really have to complain about this time of year?
I don't know, but I bet a lot of your athletes are sick.
Not a lot are sick. A lot of them are sick of the decisions they made once upon a time to live in the Midwest and the Northeast.
I know. No, it's just got to be hard fighting
I love it here. It never gets too hot. Things are great. And then it's like, oh my God, why do I live here? I can't even leave my house.
You know
it's
why?
It's so cold. Everything is cold.
Yeah, but it tests your body. It challenges those stress pathways. Makes it tougher.
And let's be honest. It really shows how tough, tried, and true your relationships are.
Yeah.
Because we all love our spouses and our kids, but good God, can you imagine being stuck in there for a week with nowhere to go? Testing the mettle of plenty of relationships and the love or dislike of said trainers and treadmills. There has been a huge lack of swimming this week, but I gotta be like, hey, I see things are closed, the roads are terrible, the kids are out of school, it's negative. It's really it's kind of dangerous attempts to get outside and even attempt anything in most of these places. And I had a couple athletes say like, hey, I don't have a treadmill at home, or I have a treadmill at home, or I don't have one, but I don't have access to a pool because the gym's not even going to open tomorrow. And you just got to kind of make do and suck it up and hop on Zillow and look for a new place to live.
Yeah. And you wonder why us people from Wisconsin spend a lot of time in bars.
It's funny you say that because I was, and this is actually where we're not talking about bars, but the person I was talking to yesterday morning about swim training, she's from Wisconsin and said that it's cold when the bars are closed in Green Bay.
Ooh.
Like, I don't even know. That's kind of like a national emergency.
That's pretty big, dude.
I've never been to Green Bay, but I've been to Madison, obviously, and back in my heyday where I was living it up, and boy, they love their bars. They love their beer and their bars and their cheese curds.
Yeah. And
everything else is a distant fourth and fifth. But yeah, it's
Church
been cold.
Closed before bars up there.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, it's hey, nothing much to complain about. It's another beautiful Thursday for us, and we appreciate you joining us here on the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast, episode 238.
Yeah,
dude, I am batting 1,000 this year.
Yep.
Turning the leaf. Had a lot of complaints.
Breakthrough, man.
Yeah, had a lot of negative feedback via email that I was wondering about my memory and how much I don't pay attention to details when I can't even know the number of the podcast I'm doing. And so I'm really trying to turn over a new leaf this year and pay attention to more details. It's the little things that matter.
You're doing good.
And I appreciate your encouragement.
Should we do our Super Bowl prediction now or later?
Let's just do it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of spoiler alert.
I don't know.
I'm going Rams. I'm going Rams by 4.
You're usually pretty good at this stuff.
I usually am. I'm going Rams by 4.
Well,
in a great game.
In a great game.
In a great game. I think I'm thinking like 40 to 34, something like that. It's not. I know it's a 6-point difference, but
yeah.
I think it's gonna be in the 40s and 30s game.
And see, I don't think of that as a good game. That's the problem with what's going on. There's too much scoring.
Let me just say this. I think it's going to be an exciting game.
Exciting if you like Madden.
I'm not a video game guy. I just think it'll be exciting. I think it's.
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
You got a guy that's 6 years younger than me coaching a pro team in the Super Bowl, which in itself is insane. And then you've got arguably the greatest coach of all time. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a good game, but I got Rams by 4. Who are you going with?
I got to go with myself.
I'm not surprised on that one either.
Well,
Tom Brady Jr. for the win.
I just can't remember it seems like all Super Bowls, and I could just be misremembering this, but it seems like all the Super Bowls lately, like the last 5 or 7 or whatever, have been close.
Yeah, they have been. They've been pretty good.
But remember back in the day when there never was a good Super Bowl, they were always blowouts?
Mm-hmm. I remember these.
I think it's time for a blowout.
Wow. You're going blowout, huh?
Yeah, 24-10.
Oh, that's a weak pick. 24-10. You're just picking the winner in the blowout. That's not even.
I'm longing for the old days.
Yeah, I know you are.
I want a 9-6 final.
I mean that would be awesome. I do like watching. Growing up a huge fan of Tennessee football. I've always been a huge fan of, well, not losing like they are now, but of a solid run game and great defense.
Yeah, well,
that's my favorite to watch. But hey,
Brady threw for 500+ yards last year with no interceptions, and they lost. What kind of game is this turned into?
To a backup quarterback.
I don't get this.
Anyway, we digress.
I'm not watching.
That was your. Yeah, you are. That was our daily non triathlon team sports update, and we will now hop back into the isolated universe that is triathlon training, and cover a variety of topics that will no doubt whet your appetite for more.
I have a
topic for today because I do.
Oh, you do too?
You got. Well, I always have one. I'm just kind of waiting for you to disrupt our podcast with one of your awesome theories.
Well,
and you got. Let's hear it.
I have an interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day about an MMA coach, or he was an MMA coach, and he was talking about, and it got me thinking too, because I've been talking to a lot of these club athletes, and I just feel, there's obviously, this as a coach, there's a lot of different personalities among athletes, and I don't know if personality is the right word, or just style or approaches or whatever you want to call it. But he was talking about how he trains MMA fighters, and before he even starts designing their plan or thinking about how to coach them, he breaks them into 4 categories. And for him, it was fighter, athlete, competitor, or artist, which I thought was very interesting, because fighter is basically somebody that's just a combat person. Athlete is someone with tremendous skill, natural abilities. Competitor is someone that just doesn't quit, and an artist is someone that is creative. And a lot of times, the artists get sort of pegged as maybe like soft or loose or whatever like that, because they have their own style, and nobody really recognizes it or whatever. But sometimes I think we cross these paths with triathletes, where you obviously must have that range of types of personalities or approaches. And
oh God, I don't even know if I could put it into
4 buckets.
Yeah. I mean, when you work with so many different athletes with variety of experiences and age and past and married or not married. I mean, there's so many different types of personalities. And then not only like different types of personalities that you deal with, but also like just how you communicate with said personality, because I can see like the way you want to train them might be different, how you program them might be different, but in your coaching style, but then that's also included in like communication. How do you communicate with that athlete? Do they feel like they need a that a boy or a that a girl every single time they do a workout in order to feel like they're doing a good job? Or so you do, and then you have some that like if you don't talk to them in black and white, then they see no other colors. Like it's not that they're not comfortable answering their own, like if there might be like a little bit of leeway or a little, because I leave a lot of gray because I like for them to figure things out. There's athletes who will go out and be confident to do that, and other ones are so precise. They're like, I need to know exactly what to do here. I need to know exactly. And so you have to explain, either A, sorry, I'm not going to give it to you, you got to get over it, or here's what I mean exactly to a T. They have to understand, they have to feel like they're doing it perfectly, because if they don't, then the result won't be what we're all trying to achieve. And then you just have other athletes who are get it and go. They do exactly what you tell them to do all the time. They'll ask a question here and there, but other than that, they just do the work. And and then you've got other athletes. It's just there's a huge variety of athletes on both ends of the spectrum. That's what makes it interesting. As a coach, is going back and forth between. I tell people this all the time. I don't think they believe me, but being in the service industry for so long, like I was a great prep for coaching, because you deal with a different personality every 30 seconds. So like when I used to wait tables, if you got 4 tables at one time, every single table is going to be different.
Yeah.
Totally different personality, totally different needs, totally different approach. And so you have to be able to pick up the cues very, very quickly and understand how to talk or not talk, or leave them alone or not leave them alone. And so you have to be really, really aware, and you have to pay attention. You have to listen. And in the world that we live in now, with how communication is built, so little of it is face to face, or even over the phone. It's text, email, message, in training peaks. You have to pick up on other cues that the person kind of breadcrumbs, if you will, of paying attention to. All right, that's not really what I was expecting to hear from you today. So what's going on? Or really, really chatty athletes who usually leave 48 sentences in training peaks, everything about their whole entire life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't leave something, then you also ask what's going on. Especially if it's 2 in a row, because that usually means time is at a crunch. They didn't have time, or they're feeling overloaded. There's different types of athletes, different types of cues, and you just have to read those cues as best you can as a coach to help deliver and communicate the best plan for each athlete and keep things as good as possible.
Yeah, that's got to be difficult for you as a coach.
Oh my God.
What I'm learning, I just feel like, as I sort of lead this club program that we have, and we've got quite a few athletes in there now, and it's sort of a baptism by fire for me in a lot of ways. And I'm kind of feeling around in that space that you're talking about. And to me, that just sort of is already feeling like the most difficult and most important part of coaching is to, because triathletes, and I know a lot of them, obviously, and I've been around them for a long time, and I think the very nature of training for triathlon puts it can tend to put an extra stressor on you, because you always have something that day, or 2 things that day that you kind of prioritize, but that you can't make them number 1 all the time, but they're always just keep coming. It's like a slow drip that just never seems to stop. And it's tough to get up for these workouts all the time, or it's tough to keep in a groove. But like we talk about all the time, the more you're in a groove, the easier it gets. And sometimes the busiest people are the happiest people, and the ones that get all the work in. And sometimes if you got a lot of time, you end up putting stuff off, and you know what I mean? So it's like a weird balance of how do you manage and keep on top of all these different personalities colliding with all these different lifestyles and levels of training and what have you.
Well, so much of coaching and working with athletes is also education. And this is, I don't want to say it's the opposite, but it's contradictory to how a lot of other coaches would like for it to happen. I know a lot of coaches specifically that, for whatever reason, want their athletes to feel like, if you don't have me, you won't know what to do with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I am the dictator. I control all things. You have no flexibility. you are nothing without me, and I tell you what to do every moment of the day. And I don't want any part of that. I want athletes to think for themselves. I want athletes to feel educated. I like for them to take some power over their workouts and how they feel and how they communicate and take ownership of what they're doing, and feel like athletes need to feel a sense of ownership and feel empowered, in my opinion, to really, really be successful. They need to be a part of the program, not separate from the program. And the other part of it is just cutting through all the bullshit and being like, listen, like I don't hold these 68 magic workouts or these 23 hidden data sets that will make you the greatest triathlete ever that nobody else knows about. Like it's about working hard. It's about being consistent. It's about being patient. And then like I was talking to a newer athlete who lives in the UK and he was asking about, different things. I said, listen, man, 80 to 90% of coaching is getting you to understand that as long as we can be consistent and we can build week after week after week after week after week, we can increase the training load, we can play with the intensity, we can keep you healthy. Because when this athlete's, some of his biggest pitfalls had been going through ebbs and flows, like 2 or 3 weeks on, couple weeks off, couple months on, couple months off. I was like, listen, if we can get you to where you're healthy and happy and consistent for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, that's 85 to 90% of the game.
Yeah.
The 10% is where coaches really, really come in terms of what they see and how they manipulate training or intensity or load. And that's how you really can sharpen the sword. You make the sword together as a team. It's that how pointy and how sharp it is where the coach really comes in handy in what they see. But the other stuff just isn't that much rocket science. And I think a lot of coaches want you to feel like it's rocket science, because if you don't, then it's kind of threatening.
Yeah,
well, then why do you?
The curtain.
Yeah, it's like, what's behind the curtain, man? Like, it's because you feel like maybe they won't feel like they need you. If it's not that complicated, then I can do it myself. Okay, well then show me. And it's there's a lot of nuances and a lot of things you have to understand, but it's getting them to buy into your not so much your program, because they are different, but just in terms of like how you approach things and then how they approach things. And then I think I told you this as a couple weeks when you first started the club thing, is one of the most difficult things for a coach to separate, especially if that coach is still active and is still an athlete and is still trying to pursue their own goals, is separating your thoughts and your approach and your energy and your motivation, your drive and your desire away from other athletes that might not have it at that exact moment, because it could be frustrating. Why is this person not working out? Mm-hmm. Then you ask them, and then so you have to take yourself out of it, because it's not about you, it's about them. And you have to figure, okay, well, where in my experiences and when in my athletic history or career have I also suffered through this kind of issue, whether it's injury or family or whatever, and what kind of advice can I give to them to help them get to the other side? Yeah. Not condemn them for going through a rough patch, which again is very, very common. Like, they get like verbal lashings from coaches. I'm like, you're there to support, you're there to lift up, you're there to build up, and you're there to help them find a way through. Because I think one of the biggest areas that coaches come in handy that people don't think about is helping you navigate a life that is crazy, in order to find the opportunities to train so that you can be consistent, so that you can reach your potential. It's not necessarily you just train. If you can't find time, then you suck. It's all right. Let me see if I can help you find a way, or maybe I can plan better, or maybe I'm setting you up for failure by too much, or maybe this is too, on the wrong days. And so it takes communication, and it takes a coach, I think, that's willing to, you have to be a part of this athlete's life and help them navigate life, which is hard because life, sucks sometimes. But the longer you're coaching and the more athletes you work with, the more you've seen. And the more you've seen, the more examples of success and overcoming these obstacles and finding a way you have to put in your little black book of, like, it's very rare that I have an athlete going through a situation that I haven't dealt with before, or that another athlete isn't currently already going through. So you're troubleshooting, but you have this list of, how have I gotten through it? How have we gotten through it? What did we do that worked here? What have we done that worked here? And then you do the best you can with what you have with the athlete, and you do your best to do it together, not just as an individual.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think a lot of athletes come into this with this idea that, like, once a training plan is thrown in their training peaks, and they see that, and then anything less than that is failure. And I don't know where that comes from. I mean, maybe it's because of some experiences, like you were saying, which I think is weird that, unless you're, I guess, paying for a high-end Olympian-type training situation, or you want to, you're a pro athlete or something like that, where, yeah, if you start firing up, if you're not doing workouts and your real goal is to be on top of the mountain, that's a whole different thing. But most of the people that deal with the sport are just trying to get a little bit better. And how do you navigate that space? And I find myself more often than not saying, talking to somebody that's super busy and their work is really crazy right now. And it's like, I don't know if I can get in a, hour and a half ride after work with a swim or whatever the case may be. And I'm just like, go for a 20-minute run, man, when you get home and see what happens. It's a tricky situation, and I definitely have learned a lot just talking to you about how to handle, just the different layouts of lifestyles. And I don't know, I just find it fascinating because it's just so, we want to put triathlon on a pedestal, but I think sometimes we have to keep that in check. You know what I mean?
Well, we do, and I think that's also the responsibility of the coach. In that because it's funny, because I think most athletes, or a lot of athletes that maybe don't have a coach, think, oh, well, my coach is there to tell me that I have to do all the workouts and to motivate me not to miss. Like, a coach can't make you motivated. Like, believe me, as a coach, I see unmotivation all the time. As well as motivation. You can't motivate somebody. You can help them find their motivation, but ultimately it's up to them. It's not like in a can, and yelling at somebody and rah-rahing is not motivation. It's scare tactics, and it might last for a minute, but it's not going to be internally something that's going to be sustainable. But as a coach, you also have to recognize when maybe this person's obsession to not miss is also creating negative feedback. Like I had an athlete who, and this is really common with athletes who are very committed and very consistent, they get scared to miss a session because either they're afraid it's going to disrupt training, they're afraid they're going to, lose fitness, or especially for athletes that I start to work with who previously weren't very consistent. They were just hit or miss. They were weekend warriors. They were 3 days here, 4 days off, 4 days here, 2 days off. Once they buy in and commit and find within themselves that I can be consistent and I do like being consistent, they have this like trepidation of what's going to happen if you miss. And I had two different examples. I have an athlete who's got to travel a ton here coming up, and he has 58 straight days with no missed sessions. And he's like, man, I'm kind of scared to miss. And I was like, man, it's like, well, you shouldn't be scared because you just got 58 days in the bank. Like, you should be the opposite of scared. And so I think it's that, like, you love that, showing yourself daily how committed you are. But again, I think other athletes, I think, and this isn't his case, I don't believe in by any stretch, but I think some athletes also have that, man, I've been so committed, I don't want to feel like what I used to feel like, to feel not committed. You know what I mean? For like a day.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe I'll go back into that mentality. And then this other athlete, I looked at his workout and he was like, yeah, man, this run's actually for yesterday, but I worked out so late at night, it didn't upload until the following day. Like, it was around midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, like, believe me, I love it that you're consistent, and I commend you for your dedication, but man, don't skimp on the sleep. Like, it's going to catch up to you. And one session missed is always better than 5 days off because you got sick or you're run down. So I was like, dude, just be very careful. Next time, just bag it and go to bed. You know, like, so again, that's like the opposite of what a lot of people would think of as a coach's role, you know, is don't work out today, you know, miss that workout. But again, it's about balance. It's about that balance of keeping them healthy and keeping them happy, and maybe seeing things that they can't, but also looking out for their overall well-being and their good, so they can continue to do this week after week after week after week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I can't imagine really when you miss a day or whatever. Let's say that's quote unquote a mini taper or something like that, a recovery thing or whatever the case is. I can't imagine going through, you know, like you're saying, 50 or 90 days of sort of just kind of hanging on by a thread and never really feeling good, versus, you know, taking a day here and there or a real easy whatever it is and actually feeling good for a lot of this training, versus just wearing yourself to the end and just fighting to get through it. Because that just, to me, is just I'm not saying this particular guy, but just like in general, I could see how that creates the 3 months off over the winter. You know what I mean? That kind of like, man, it would just seem like ideally you would want to train in a way that sets you up for your, say it's a late season half or full, that's your big race, and you want to, you know, go into that feeling good, and you want to come out of it feeling kind of good, you know, so you can just sort of keep going. Yeah, one of the things I've noticed is that I'm starting to, like, as I started coaching initially in December, you know, it was sort of that you'd see red or you'd see green in Training Peaks. Red, of course, means you didn't do anything, and green is you nailed the workout. And then you start seeing, is it orange and yellow?
Yeah, orange and yellow. Yeah, you can make it whatever color you want. I don't think people understand that, but you can make it whatever color you want. It's just the standard default for Training Peaks.
Oh, okay. So when I start, what I noticed was that what is yellow, like?
Yellow can be either, it's something you've either gone over or gone under.
Okay, yeah, so you're within 20% of the goal or whatever like that. When I started seeing people do yellows that were struggling, that was really a good sign for me, because like you start to notice that there's an attempt and they really maybe thought it through, and it's like, well, I'm not quite feeling it or whatever the case is, and they get a little bit of a momentum that way. So in other words, I'm seeing yellow as a positive. I think there's a certain mentality shift that you have to go through to get to that point. Maybe it's like if you're not seeing all green, but a yellow mixed in here and there. I really find that as a positive sign. I don't know how you look at it.
Well, and this is like another myth, I think, is that as coaches, we're perfect all the time. We know exactly what to apply and exactly how to do it all the time. And that's not the case for any coach. Like, there is zero perfection. That just doesn't exist. You can use as much data as you say you want to, but it's still, this is best case scenario for what I see and what I believe can happen. But it doesn't always mean that you're right. And so, again, as a coach, you're also always thinking, if I'm always giving a load that's perfectly appropriate, which again is also almost impossible. It's going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit more, but obviously you more than often want to, err towards the side of it just a little bit lighter, because for the most part, because you want to continue to see good trends, but at the same time, you also have to be confident and figure out what these athletes are in fact capable of, because you don't want to put your hands so much on an athlete to mold them in your way. You want to kind of take your hands off, put their blindfold on, and just help guide them in a direction, and let them do the work while you're kind of guiding them, but let them ultimately make decisions for themselves. And in order to do that, you have to be careful in reining them in too much too, because you might be preventing them from doing some self-exploration, or you might be doing yourself as a coach a disservice to figure out maybe this athlete can handle more of a load than we think. Maybe they're recovering better than we think, and that's different male to female too, and ages and situations. But so it's sometimes you kind of have to see A, what they can handle, and then B, sometimes what they're made of. Like mentally, can they do this? Can they focus for this amount of time? Can they not focus for this amount of time? And if they can't, then maybe I have to adjust the training to be more of a gradual ramp, and this just kind of is what it is. Or they can handle these big ebbs and flows and get the work done and still recover. And so there's obviously you can say there's a million ways to skin a cat, but there's just so many different ways that you also have to be careful not to hold them back, and let some exploration happen while it's like you're in a moving car. We've used this analogy before. It's like you're in a moving car on the freeway, and you're like switching seats while the car is moving. All right, you can drive. All right, you're done driving. Let me have the steering wheel. You know what?
Okay.
You take the steering wheel. That's cool. I'm gonna hop in the back. I'm gonna take a nap. I think you got this. Oh my God, you're gonna kill us. Let me get back in the front. Let me take control. You get in the back seat. Close your eyes. Get down. I'll take it from here. But you can't know all these things if you're that like dictator coach of like putting a stranglehold on your athlete's ability. And it's a delicate. It's not a perfect science as much as people want to tell you it's a perfect science, and they know that you don't, because everyone's different, and you have to be careful, but you also have to push, and you also have to be willing to flirt with the boundaries of what might be successful. And the greatest athletes on the planet, triathlete, endurance athletes, have all gotten hurt. They've all gotten hurt. They've all done something, because not because they have crappy form, not because they have crappy coaching, not because they weren't made to do this. It's because at some point they and their coach, or together, pushed it a little bit too far to figure out how far is too far. Because the goal of a coach is not to push you your farthest, it's to push you to about a foot or 2 feet before your brink. Because you don't want to go over that cliff to where it causes sickness and overtraining and injury and all these kind of things. You don't want to force that, or just so much fatigue that it crushes you. Like, you want to get pretty close to that, but each athlete's line of where that's drawn is totally different. But there's really good not standard, but there's very good, I think each coach has kind of their you need to be able to handle X load to perform Y race to get Z result. But the rest of it is, okay, you can handle X. Now can you handle this a little bit more? And can you handle a little bit more? And can you handle a bit more? Or do we need to put it back? Or should we have started at Q? And so I think as a coach that there's just always this, it can come across that it's never second guessing. It's just never being you're just never 100% sure until it's done. And I think that that's something that I don't think a lot of coaches like to talk about, because it makes you sound like you don't know what you're doing. But in fact, it's the opposite. If you think that that you know exactly the exact training load of every single athlete every single time, and it's always green and they never complain or they never get too fatigued, then you're probably not doing enough. You need to be able to hit a point to where the athlete says, "Hey, coach, I'm pretty close. Like, I'm tired." Then you've learned something huge. Okay, now let me take a step back. Let me zoom out on my lens and look at the last 4 to 5 weeks. How much training did we do? How much intensity did we do? How much volume did we do? You were able to do these 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks maybe of increased volume before you finally felt really fatigued. Perfect. So let's take a couple rest days. Let's soak it all in. And now let's do probably fairly close to the exact same thing again, but let's increase this or increase that and decrease this. You can't learn everything by perfection. Like people always tell you learn from your greatest mistakes. And the goal of a coach is to make mistakes, but just don't make them huge mistakes. Like, you know what? Maybe you could handle a 25-mile run today. And then you send out Johnny to break both his legs. Like, you don't want to do that. But we talked about this many times before. A good example of that risk, or I think you can, but we need to see if you can, is that day that we rode the trace the first year you and I worked together, like 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Your longest ride to date had been like what, 50 or 60?
Yeah, I think so. And
you came out, as your usual, a little bit later than the rest of us, because sleep's important. It was always funny. I'll tell you guys this: Mike always says sleep's important, so he always sleeps in, but he still usually gets less sleep than the rest of us because he doesn't go to bed till like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
at least back then. But we come up on Mike, and he's riding solo, and he's and you gotta picture this. Like, you go out for a ride on the trace, super hilly terrain. This is the summer day. It was hot. And your mind is wrapped around doing 60.
Yep.
And we pull up next behind him, and I'm on the back, and I'm like, "Hey man," we chat for a minute. Like, "Yeah, why don't you hop on? We're gonna do another loop." And another loop meant another 50. And he went from longest ride of 50 to 110 that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're figuring out not only what the athlete can handle, you're figuring out where the athlete's mentality is. Are they willing to do these kind of things? Even though he was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe not. But then it's also like, I don't want to say it's a hidden test. It's a, kind of the proof's in the pudding. You know what? If he can do this and do it well, then what we're doing is working. And we went out, and you did great, and you finished. And so you got the confidence you needed. And as a coach, I got not confidence, but I got good training, positive reinforcement in. Okay, so we are on the right track. And so again, like, as coaches, we have to continuously create these miniature, non-huge risk opportunities for athletes to show themselves that they're at a certain place, to give them confidence, but then B, for the coach, hey, we actually are heading in the right direction. This is working, or this is working great, or you know what, this isn't working as well as I want it to do, so we need to change something up. So you have to be willing to make those decisions and make those adjustments, and just it's always molding this and molding that. Try to figure it out.
There's my thought pattern during that day that you were just talking about was, I think we all go through it too as we get into triathlon, because it becomes sort of a cascade of PRs. If you're just new, let's say you're training for your first Ironman, and you're used to maybe doing 10K at max or whatever the case is, what happens is you start training for Ironman, and then almost every week it seems like you're doing something more than you ever did or thought you could do. And I can't remember what part of the training that was, maybe like 2 months out, maybe from Wisconsin, my first Ironman. And in the back of my mind, I thought that I could do that, but I just wasn't ready to feel that yet, or to push that far yet, maybe. And that's how my thinking was, and that's how I think about it a lot of times. Is sort of like, I know I can summons the mental fortitude to push through certain things if I get to a certain place. Like if I know I can go out tomorrow and run 12 miles or something, then I feel like, well, all right, the way I felt towards the end of that, I know I could probably run a full marathon or whatever the case may be. So I was just trying to, I guess in a sort of a twisted kind of own it my own way, not to burn matches in training. But I don't know if that's right either, because I think there's a fear there I had about really learning, like, oh man, it's sort of like you go into your first Ironman, you've never done that distance before, and there's always that fear in the back of your mind that you might not be able to pull it off because you've just never done it. And what could happen? And that's maybe sort of that little fear that I had to get over too, was that bump up to like, okay, come on, you got to see what you can do at some level. You got to start pushing it beyond, and there's so many of those ledges that you kind of have to just step off. During training, it's like, well, today we're going out for a 80-mile ride, and we're going to run 4 miles off the bike, which we've never done. Okay, I guess I'll do that, and then you start building that confidence layer every time you do that sort of thing. But it is important, I think, to be ready for those things, like you're saying, because you don't want to learn that, you weren't even close to that, and now you're laid up for the next week and a half or whatever. So that's another reason. It's a weird reason, but I've been talking about this, and I'm training for Chattanooga 70.3, and I have certainly gotten to the point where I'm comfortable with that distance, but I have, from day one of this year, I went on a long 20-week beginner 70.3 plan because it just feels more comfortable to me, and there's opportunity in there. Like, everybody doesn't have to have the pro plan or the advanced plan to beat you down. I mean, there's opportunity within that beginner intermediate phase to just push yourself, and build yourself into that zone where you're ready to take that next level. And I've been starting to get there with my bike workouts, and still, I just think there has to be a comfort zone, and to push out of it too fast is just always my fear.
And you have to be careful as a coach, especially, to when you insert these things in. A lot of times you just need to kind of make them sometimes you make them unknown to the athlete. I'm looking at this as a check-in, a fitness check-in. How are we adapting check-in? How are we handling load check-in? And I don't want you to see, because then the athlete obviously puts an undue amount of pressure on themselves. But then if there's some reason in their eyes they fail, they're like, I've done all this work, I haven't gotten anywhere, I don't even know what's going on, I don't even know why I signed up for this race. Because they always jump to I'll never be able to do this, I don't know how in the world I'm going to be able to be ready. And I'm like, first, calm the hell down and you'll be fine. But so you have to be careful, and again, that also comes into knowing the athlete's history, knowing where their mindset is, knowing their personality. Are they more likely to be, Debbie Downer and the world is falling and I'm the worst triathlete ever, or are they more likely to be, ego Eric, where they're like, dude, I got this, I'm qualifying for Worlds tomorrow. And you just have to be. I don't work with any of those because I would refuse to, but you just got to be careful, again, like with massaging the personality and the characteristics and the ability and the load and the check-ins, and it's kind of like, if you're coaching the right way, the athlete should not feel like your hands are on them ever at all. But on the race day, when they're finished, they should be able to see your fingerprints. You're slightly helping massage the way with this and that, and up and down, and hard and soft, and intensity and no intensity. And they should feel like they're in control. But, you know, at the end of the day, at the end of it, like, see, you helped me get there. It's always you helped me get there. It's never, athletes, get this through your head. If you have a coach and you talk to a coach and you talk to them after race, never tell them, ever, you got me here. You did this. Coaches don't want to hear that. We got there. We did this, and I helped. That's how it is. It's not the other way around. And so again, like, it's very much, I think coaching should be kind of like that silent partner, you know, who we know what we're doing, we know how we're getting there. Let's get there together, and then you kind of take the rest. So it's a lot to manage within each athlete. But again, that makes it fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very mature approach, I think, right there.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't know if it's a mature approach. I just think that, like, if you're out there and you're a coach and you want athletes to finish and do well because it makes you look good, then why are you even doing it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you should, like, my favorite, without question, and it's not even close, my favorite part of watching athletes finish a race is when they get to greet their family. Like, if you were racing Louisville, so you didn't know, but when I that was the last race that I went to with a bunch of athletes there, but we had 25 athletes at Louisville, and when I knew somebody was going to come in, I never like watching athletes from the chute, watching them run by, because you're still seeing part of the race. And I love to walk past the finish line, walk past, you know, to where they've had time to gather themselves, and either greet them like 50 meters past the finish line with a hug, or wait for the exit to see them after they've hugged their family and done, you know, all the crying and the cheering and the we did it. And that's the stuff that gets you, and for me, and I think it's that way with a lot of coaches, that's the stuff that gets you out of bed in the morning. That's the stuff that gets you excited. That's the stuff that gets you pumped up, is to step back and watch these interactions happen with family and friends and people's kids is the greatest, because you see what you were a part of. You weren't the one, because you should never be the one, but you should see, man, I had a part of that. I was a part of this journey. I was a part of allowing this athlete to find this within themselves, to do this today, and their family loves it, and their kids saw a great example, and their spouse is elated because they made sacrifice. And you step back and you watch that, and you're like, God, this is the best thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hashtag you crushed it, you know, we did it. It's or I did it. It's just that's the best thing. It is easy, without question. It is hands down the greatest, the most fun, and the most rewarding part when you coach is that moment. This is the last thing I'll say, and then we can close out. But one of my most memorable moments from Louisville was watching this athlete finish. She finished fairly close to the deadline, and she crossed the finish line. And before I even got to her, her husband walked up to me and gave me this huge hug, and he said, "We did it."
That's awesome.
And it was seriously, it's one of the most memorable moments of my coaching career. And he said, "We did it," because in that moment, again, like you didn't already know, like you remind yourself that it's a entire team effort. You know, like he didn't set one foot on that course. He didn't run 1 mile. He didn't pedal one stroke. He didn't swim one lap. But it's that mentality of we did it. To know that, like, hey man, we're all in this together. We're in the trenches together. We all make it out. we're all celebrating. It's a we thing, not a me thing. And like I said, it's one of the most memorable moments in my coaching career, because I think it just sums up perfectly how you should feel in that moment. And it's hard work, but it's special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a thing about it that I mean, these people, your athletes, our athletes, they decide that they want to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's their decision, and that's something in there that makes them want to do that, makes them want to go through all this training, makes them want to suffer and get out of bed early and do whatever it is and get to that finish line. And it's not, you didn't force them or talk them into, you know what I mean? It's not like the coach is the assistance program, it's the support program, it's somebody to help you get what you want. And it's not the egocentric thing of, without me you couldn't have done it. No, it's their thing. They're out there, and it's the same type of deal when you're, if they're out there on the second lap of that Ironman marathon and just hating life and hating you and everything. It's not your fault either. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like, because it's so easy and I've done it every time. that last mile 20 or whatever is just the worst thing. Why the hell did I do this? What is my coach trying to do? Blah blah. But then by like 5 minutes later, or a half hour later, you're back in love with everything. But
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's this sort of the ultimate responsibility falls on the athlete for making these decisions and going through and doing all the work and making it happen. And then as a coach, to be there and to help make that happen everything's better to do something better with someone else anyway. So it's kind of cliche, but the team effort thing is. It just gives me such a cringy feeling sometimes, because in corporate there's always like, we're a team, we do this as a team, and it's like it kind of gets a bad rap that way. But the reality is sort of a union of common goals is really where the power is.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So what was your topic again?
We can cover it next time.
Okay.
Details, man. Details.
Ooh, you're getting into the details?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Getting into the weeds.
Not much in the weeds, but just that details are important. But yeah, anyway, we can cover it Monday in our post Super Bowl recap.
Oh yeah. You are gonna watch it? Are you having a big party?
Yeah, party of 3. Allie, Hayden, and I, as per usual. Yeah, you know me, I'm a huge party guy. All the people.
Yeah.
I'll be nurturing my introvert for the next 5 days as we prepare for run camp with 62 athletes on site.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man, we went over there and checked it out.
Be ready to unleash my extrovert power.
Yeah. I'll be looking forward to that.
You hope so.
That place is incredible.
It is, man. It is a very nice place. We'll do something in there. Very, very nice place. Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. So what else is going on? I ran yesterday. It was below 20. It was like 20 degrees. It felt awesome.
It's a good time of year, I think, to run, as long as it's not like below 0.
Yeah. Yeah, that's David Goggins has got to be loving this.
Yeah, of course, he's also probably speaking everywhere imaginable, so he's probably in a bunch of sunny places.
I was going to say either that or he purposely went to like Minneapolis to speak so he could go run in 60 below. The opportunities are everywhere.
Like, see, my blood's frozen. You should heat it up with your own passion. Yeah. Who knows? That guy's crazy yet amazing all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we appreciate all of our crazy and amazing listeners.
Yep.
If you like what you hear, or even don't, honestly, head over to iTunes. Give us a rating. Let us know what you think. Subscribe. And then if you want more info on the other things that we do, training camps, swim analysis, the blog, videos, training and coaching packages, and our club, you can always head over to crushingiron.com for more info. And then if you have direct questions for Mike, you can hit him up at crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can contact me directly at c26coach@gmail.com.
That sounds like a plan.
Yep. And we will see you Monday.
Monday it is. Thanks for checking in, everybody.
Yep.
Bye-bye.